And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Monday morning, showing a band of IFR here from the Kuskokwim Yukon Delta northward there across the Seward Peninsula, and then just clipping Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. More IFR, eastern north slope out to the Arctic coast. VFR here, central eastern interior areas, and areas of marginal VFR out across the Bering Sea and the Aleutians with some VFR thrown in. Mostly marginal for Bristol Bay here, except northeast Bristol Bay. VFR into Kodiak Island, and of course up into Prince William Sound. Marginal VFR right along the North Gulf Coast, and the Panhandle, marginal VFR with IFR over the eastern and northern areas. That about holds through Monday afternoon for the Panhandle as well as the North Gulf Coast. Marginal VFR now working in across Prince William Sound up into the Mananuska Valley, possibly, maybe the Talkeetnas. And VFR, though, for the eastern Kenai, or western Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet down to Kodiak Island. Marginal VFR getting close to the eastern coastline there, both Fognak and Kodiak. But Bristol Bay VFR, so have this band of IFR here in the west, but improving for the Arctic coast up there, but still marginal VFR. And not much change out here over the Bering Sea, just areas of VFR and marginal VFR over the area there. And that about holds through Tuesday morning. Pretty widespread area of VFR here, central Bering Sea down to Adak and Atka. Marginal VFR to the west, marginal VFR to the east into the southwest coast. IFR still southern or western Brooks Range, Kotzebue Sound into the Selawik and western Kobuk Valley there, on down in toward the Kuskokwim Delta. And a little more in the way, the VFR zone kind of getting pinched off here, but holding over Cook Inlet, Mananuska Valley into the Kuskokwim Valley, down to Bristol Bay. Also up over the Koyukuk Valley, eastern Arctic coast, central Arctic coast, also forecast to be VFR for Tuesday morning. IFR here over the eastern interior. Not much change for the Panhandle, still IFR to the north and east. And marginal VFR out into the Gulf of Alaska. That pretty much holds, or it does hold, through Tuesday afternoon. More IFR now, pretty widespread over the eastern interior here, mostly north of the Alaska Range. And marginal VFR creeping westward slowly to about the Chugach Mountains there, and at least the northern Kenai Peninsula. But down toward Kachemak Bay, Kamishak Bay, VFR Kodiak Island, southeast Bering Sea VFR to the eastern Aleutians. And still IFR here, eastern Norton Sound, right on up to the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range. And out to the west, marginal VFR from Atka Island westward to Shimian-Attu. And for passes tomorrow, Anatuvik, possibly marginal VFR conditions for that pass, but I think Adigan will stay VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. And for windy, VFR as well. As rainy and windy, VFR. Isabel, VFR, with Mentasta holding at VFR. And Tanita, looking at conditions coming down toward VFR, deteriorating conditions late morning into the afternoon, especially on the eastern entrance here. And then for Portage, same pattern, VFR to start, but becoming marginal VFR, especially on the eastern entrance. And Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet east of Kodiak and well south again off the chart here out west. At the surface near the Pribilofs to south of the Alaska Peninsula, right across Kodiak Island, in across the northern Panhandle with 2,000 feet there near just south of the Juneau area. And for icing, moisture coming west-northwestward again, increases icing along the east side of Kodiak Island. Across the Gulf of Alaska could be a zone of considerable moderate rime icing in this area, back across Yakutat and then northern Panhandle off down to the east. And the jet stream showing south to southwest flow, 60 knots here over the northern Panhandle, closer to 80 or 90 knots down toward the southern areas there, Prince of Wales Island over toward Misty Fjords. And a trough out here in the west, south flow to southwest, 60 to 75 knots over the interior. And then northwest, 80 to 85 knots there over the western Bering Sea into the western Aleutians. And at 9,000 feet, we've got northwest winds 35 to 40 knots. From the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, back up to the northwest there, just south of St. Lawrence Island. Northerlies 40 knots, western Aleutians. Low pressure here coming up into the southern Gulf of Alaska, so east-northeast 45 knots on the increase along the North Gulf Coast here. Lighter for Kodiak Island. Good south to north flow into the Panhandle up to 40 to 65 knots. 3,000 feet or a band ahead of that front of 50-knot winds there into the Gulf of Alaska. Lighter, though, for the southeast coast. A little lighter here. And north, 45 knots across the Alaska Peninsula. Light and variable over much of the interior. Light easterlies for the Arctic coast. And north winds here up to 45 knots over portions of the Bering Sea. And possibly the Alaska Peninsula. And for turbulence, look for light to isolated moderate chop, Adak and Atka. And considerable moderate turbulence, though, for the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, including Resurrection Bay, eastward there along the North Gulf Coast, on down over a good portion of the Panhandle. Better conditions to the north and out over the Bering Sea.